Welcome to today's show. Today's layout is all about rubber stamping. On my layout, I'm going to show you how to create an entire finished project using nothing but rubber stamps. As you can see here, the journaling block, the embellishments, the title is all created using rubber stamps. What I'm doing now is just attaching some of the light melon cardstock to the dark melon. I'm using a watermelon coloured base cardstock for this layout. Today I'm using a black and white photo on my layout. I find that if you're using a black and white photograph, you can actually use any coloured cardstock that you like because black and white goes with anything. To create the journaling block, I'm using the calendar set of rubber stamps by Darkroom Door. It actually comes with all the different months and the lines and the numbers to create your own calendars. However, what I've done is actually trimmed the numbers separate to the lines of that rubber stamp, so I can use the line stamp by itself to create a good journaling block. So just adhere that to an acrylic block, and then I'm just using a watermelon ink pad, ink it up, and then stamp it onto your cardstock. Once you've stamped it, all you need to do is trim it out and then adhere it to your layout. I've trimmed out the actual journaling block. All I'm doing now is just mounting it onto some green cardstock, just to make it pop off the page a little bit more. So then I'll now just stick those two together so it's ready for the layout. So you can use the adhesive that you prefer to use, whether it's double-sided tape or glue dots, that's completely up to you. And once you have that mounted, what we're going to do now is just ink up the edges, just to grunge it up a little bit. I like to actually press the ink pad onto the side of the cardstock, that way you can actually see what you're doing rather than doing it upside down like that way. And you just gently tap around the edges of the cardstock just to grunge it up just a little. I'm now just inking up the edges of the cardstock that is mounted onto the photo or underneath the photo, and that means it'll then match the little journaling block that you've just done. So just lightly tap on all the way around. If you don't want to go directly from the ink pad, you could also use an ink blending tool and actually sponge the ink on. That gives an entirely different look as well. It's more softer and blends the ink rather than actually having the sharp little lines that we have here today. But both of them are really great techniques and you can just choose whichever one suits you. Now we're going to move on to the embellishments of the layout. As you can see here, I've created little circles and hearts, all completely with rubber stamps. I'm using different stamps from Darkroom Door, so I'll be using flowers, music scripts, butterflies, anything that you prefer to be on your layout. And all we're doing now is stamping to create our embellishments. So the first one that I'm doing is just using the music script. The actual stamp, as you can see as I'm stamping, is a rectangle. However, after I stamp it, I'm going to be using some different size punches to actually punch it out to create some different shapes. So now I have my punched shape and it is ready to go onto the layout. Okay, I want to add a bit of bling to the layout, so what I'll be doing this time is embossing the next stamped embellishment. So I'm just going to ink up the stamp and then stamp it onto your cardstock. Now you want to work fairly quickly when you do this because you don't want the ink to dry. And the embossing powder I'm using today is a holographic embossing powder. So all you need to do is just tap off the excess onto a scrap piece of paper and then gently place that back into the jar. With your heat tool, heat up the embossing powder until you can see that it's fully embossed. Next we're going to be using a punch to punch out the flower for your layout. Now I've stamped my embellishments, I'm going to add them to the bottom of my layout. I've just used a piece of double-sided tape, and for the first one I'm just going to stick it up to the edge, and then after that I'm going to use some foam adhesive just to make some of them pop off the page a little bit. Now foam adhesive is thin enough so it won't bulk up your albums too much, but it's also thick enough just to give things a little lift that you might want. Now I'm going to create the title by using foam stamps and paint. The colours I'm using are Lemonade and Willow. So all you need to do with paint dabbers, you don't require a paintbrush. You can just simply dab them onto your foam stamps to actually ink up the stamp. So I'm just putting a bit of Lemonade down first. Then I'm just going to add a little bit of Willow over the top, and then what that gives is just a hint of the green colour with the yellow, so it's a multicoloured letter. And then just stamp the foam stamp onto your layout, and there is your title. So just continue that with all of the letters that you require for your title, and it will be finished. The only thing you need to do after your title is I've created a tag here just to embellish the layout a little bit more, and I've used the Darkroom Door alphabet stamps to do that. Then the only other thing I've done is I've stamped some butterflies using the Darkroom Door butterfly set, and I've trimmed out the butterflies so then you can just attach them to the layout just down their bodies and then lift them up, which gives them a little bit of 3D look. And then after that, your layout is complete. My story for this layout was actually quite important, which is why I've chosen a large journaling block for this particular layout. I've actually handwritten the entire lot of journaling for this layout. You could actually write it beforehand if you're worried about writing it directly onto your layout, and practice it a little bit before you write it on there. But basically, I think the story is a really important part of all of your scrapbook layouts, so it is important to include it in your layouts. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed all of those techniques. I'll catch you later.